Actually have a community organizing meeting in 7 minutes, but I want to take a second here and respond to the article that came out in Wired magazine titled "A Dark Money Group is Secretly Funding High-Profile Democratic Influencers." First off, thank you to Miranda and Hawk for bringing my attention to this article. I know y'all already follow Hawk, but if you don't follow Miranda yet, you should. Her content is really important. So Wired magazine has put out an article saying that a dark money group is paying Democratic influencers up to $8,000 a month to push their party line issues. That they have to talk about the issues the Democrats want them to talk about, not talk about the issues that they don't want them to talk about. And then also they have to keep it secret that they are being funded by this dark money. I knew that this shit was happening. A couple of my mutuals are influencers who very clearly disclose the pro-democracy groups that fund them. I knew there were folks out there who were taking money, both from Republicans and from Democrats, who were not willing to disclose it. I don't know if you're not an influencer, like if you make sponsored content, if you have branded content, if somebody is paying you to promote their product, by law, you must disclose it. But apparently, if you are being paid to promote political ideology, talking points, a political party or candidate, you don't have to do that. Everybody should go watch Miranda's whole video. I don't have time to get into the full list of creators mentioned in this article, but you should go hear what she has to say about it. A number of those creators are my mutuals. Now, I've made it clear from day one, I don't take money from anybody. I don't have any sponsored content. I get emails on a daily basis asking me to sponsor products or online courses or what have you for all kinds of companies. But as an anti-capitalist, I'm not interested in taking money to promote products. I have in the past, and I will continue to talk up things that I think are useful to me personally, authors whose books I enjoy. I'm not paid for any of that. And I have never, and I would never take money from any organization, any business, any political party with the requirement that I keep their funding secret. I completely agree with Hawk. Yeah, if you're a Democratic influencer and you want to take money from folks, that's your choice. But then fucking disclose it. If you want to have any integrity and authenticity whatsoever, you need to tell people who is funding you to make these talking points, to present these positions and ideas. If you're bought and paid for, you need to disclose it. The fact that people are getting paid $8,000 a month and they're not telling anybody that is shaping their content. And Miranda is absolutely right. Those folks are getting pushed in the algorithm. You are seeing more and more of their content. They are being promoted and platformed and funded in a way that suppresses content from independent creators such as myself, Hawk, Miranda. It absolutely creates a power imbalance. But more than that, y'all, the thing that I was talking about this with my daughter just a minute ago, the thing that is so upsetting to me is not just the lack of transparency, the lack of integrity, the lack of a willingness to say I'm being funded to the tune of $90,000 a year to talk about certain issues. It's also toe the Democratic Party line and don't talk about certain issues. You could never pay me to keep my mouth shut about the genocide in Gaza. You could never pay me to keep my mouth shut about any human rights issue, any environmental issue, any social justice issue that I feel compelled to speak about. Okay, I'm sorry, I actually had to dip to go to my meeting, but I'm back now to finish this video. Okay, and then I have to dash off to another meeting in just a few minutes, but I wanted to finish up here real quick. I understand that people making social media content fall into different categories. Some of us are activists. Some are doing it because it's a passion project and it just happened to turn into a way to make a living. Some of us don't make a living on social media. Some people go into it with the intention of this is my career. This is a business and I will run it like a business. And I understand that it can be very tempting to form parasocial relationships with people. And even for those of us that are creators, right, a lot of us have chats with other creators. We are in groups with other creators, as was very clearly demonstrated in this Wired article. But I think it's good to constantly remember that we aren't all here with the same outlook, the same intention, the same goals, even though we may have political or ideological alignment on some issues. I know that I am terribly idealistic and I'm very bad at running my social media like a business. Largely because I'm here as an activist. I'm here as somebody who wants to promote my values of earth care, people care, and fair share. I want to focus on people over profit, community over corporations. So that sets me at odds with running a business in a capitalistic society. Other people don't have those same compunctions. And so I know a lot of folks will take brand deals. I have been chastised by friends and people who are accountants who have told me, like, you are missing all kinds of revenue streams. Why don't you take that brand deal? Why don't you go ahead and work with those folks, right? You are missing out on all kinds of income. That's not my priority. It never has been my priority. Am I blessed now, since, the beginning of this year, a rapidly expanding social media platform to say, like, actually, I can pay my bills now making the kind of content that I make? Absolutely. Am I in a position now where I'm looking at hiring a part-time employee to help me and realize, like, I have to treat this like a real business? Yes. Does that allow me to be able to have income to donate to the causes that I care about? I know I said this in another video recently, but all of the income that I make on TikTok, for the most part, goes to charitable organizations. I make enough of an income off of my YouTube now that what little I do make off of TikTok, I can just donate all of it. That is a position of tremendous privilege. If you'd asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, it would have been a really different story for me because I make very much on social media. And now I'm in a position where, like, holy shit, I can fund a number of causes that I really care about. I view any additional revenue streams or any additional income that I make as a chance to just fund Doctors Without Borders, the ACLU, my local Indivisible chapter, GoFundMes for people who need help and support. I'm now in a position when local charities, local food banks ask for support, like, I have something to give them. And that's because of the expansion of my social media platform. So in that way, I still view the content that I make as being an extension of my activism. It allows me to help support the causes that I care so much about. I'm not saying, like, it's huge amounts. It's not huge amounts of money, y'all. But the fact that I even have that discretionary income now is because people support my channel and watch my content. But even so, like, there's lines I won't cross. I would not take $8,000 a month. There's no amount of money that you could throw at me to talk about your political positions and promote them if they were not mine. And especially if you are telling me that I have to hide where that money is coming from. Having authenticity, integrity, transparency is paramount for me. It is of utmost importance, and I will not compromise in those areas. Again, I understand why other creators who don't consider themselves activists, who are not as idealistic as I am, would take sponsorships, would take funding. I understand people have to make a living. I don't think that everybody should be making content on social media for free out of the goodness of their own heart with no compensation for their labor, their time, their skills, and the content that they are creating. I think social media creation is a real job. I think being on YouTube or TikTok and sharing your expertise, your opinion, your analysis, that's a real job. I get people in my comments all the time, especially on YouTube, who are like, go get a real job. I'm like, well, this job pays me real money. YouTube pays me real money. So to me, it's a real job. But just for those folks who are willing to take that kind of money, please, I'm begging you, have transparency, show that you have integrity, and tell us where the funding is coming from. If you're being paid to promote an idea or a position, you should tell people that. And if you are being paid to not talk about issues that you otherwise would discuss, maybe reconsider what you're doing. Maybe reconsider whether you are actually living within your values. So that's my 2 cents. That's my position. I got to head out to another meeting. I'm actually 4 minutes late to that meeting. But thanks for giving me a chance to talk about this. And thank you, Miranda, for opening up the conversation and drawing my attention to the article. Here we go. This is literally the least of our problems right now. To add, Taylor Lorenz has left every publication she's worked for due to problematic behavior, not exactly a reliable source. Well, if what she's saying in the article is not accurate, then every single social media creator that she named could seek legal action against her and Wired, I imagine. But I do want to speak to this claim of, like, here we go, this is literally the least of our problems. I disagree. I strongly disagree. A big reason that independent voters and kind of apathetic voters don't want to vote for Democrats is because they don't understand how Democrats are functionally different than Republicans, right? We have so much corruption in our politics. And there's this belief that, Democrats are just as corrupt, maybe more so. They're just not as good at hiding it or getting away with it as the Republicans are. Let me give you an example. So the criticism lobbed by gazillions of us, including AOC, against Nancy Pelosi and other establishment Democrats for years about how it's unethical for members of Congress to be able to trade in single stocks, for reasons that should be incredibly obvious to all of us. And yet Pelosi and others have fought legislation that would ban Congress from owning single stocks. Right? It just screams of how can members of Congress line their own pockets with compromised ethics. We look at so many establishment Democrats who take a shit ton of APAC money, who take a shit ton of money from big crypto, and then we watch how they vote in line with their big donors, the corporate and foreign interest that runs them, rather in the best interest of their constituents and in the best interest of democracy. If we want people to vote for Democrats, then Democrats have to be substantively different than Republicans. They have to distinguish themselves as, hey, the Republicans, they are a party not only of fascism. I don't know that that's actually that appealing of a message for kind of like centrists and independents, conservative voters who might be pissed at the Republicans. What is a compelling message is the Republicans are corrupt as fuck. Everybody under Donald Trump himself, Elon Musk, Kristi Noem, it's all a grift. They're all about lining their own pockets. Hey, Alligator Alcatraz, that was a giant fucking grift. $450 million for a tent concentration camp that's already being shut down. Oh, did you notice how the people who were getting big fat government contracts to provide services, construction, food, etc. to Alligator Auschwitz, that they were also people who donated a lot of money to Republicans, including Ron DeSantis? It's all a quid pro quo. It's all a grift. If you want to point out the glaring tremendous corruption in the Republican Party, you better not be shouting about the speck in their eye while you've got a plank in your own. Democrats have got to establish themselves as an anti-corruption party. And that means there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party who need to go if we want to save democracy. We need dark money out of our politics. We need personal enrichment out of our politics. We need shakedowns, grifts, quid pro quos out of our politics. We need to stop wasting billions, hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars on corruption every year. That is a compelling message for American voters. And we can't have shit like this going on. A lack of transparency, a perceived lack of integrity and authenticity. We can't have people funneling dark money into Democratic influencers like Olivia Giuliana, and I forget who else was mentioned in the article, David Pakman and others. Like, these big influencers cannot be talking up Democratic candidates while they are seeming to lack integrity themselves. It makes people distrust the entire system. I know that some level of corruption is going to happen in politics. It's just inevitable. But this didn't have to happen. All you had to do, y'all, was be transparent. Disclose who is paying you. It is not a good look to have dark money funding Democratic influencers and then telling those Democratic influencers, you can't tell anybody where you got the money. You can't talk about certain things, or we don't want you to talk about certain things. We want you to push our talking points, but then don't tell anybody who's paying you. That is shady as fuck. Again, I have mutuals who are pro-democracy creators who take money from different nonprofits and organizations that absolutely are pushing democratic policies. And maybe they even take money from specific PACs themselves. But they're honest about that. They say hey, so-and-so funds me. All you need to do is have transparency. Then you understand who is being funded by what, and you understand what is motivating somebody. It's the whole reason that we have laws in this country. You can't make sponsored content promoting a product and not tell people, I was paid for this endorsement. Are all the big creators mentioned in that article sus? Are they all compromised now? I don't know. We don't necessarily have all of the details yet. Although Hawk did say that everybody mentioned in the article was asked to comment and a bunch of people just didn't. You could have defended yourself and you didn't. But the optics are terrible if we're going to have the Democrats be an anti-corruption party, which I agree with Ezra from Indivisible. That's crucial. We need to end corruption. We need to get justice for all of the shit that is transpiring now. Rampant corruption in the Republican administration regime. Rampant corruption that is happening just in every single aspect of our government needs to be exposed, and there needs to be justice for what is happening now. You cannot have a party saying, we're all about getting justice, we are going to end corruption in government, and then have them have any whiff of being corrupt themselves. So no, I fundamentally disagree that we have bigger problems. This is a big problem because unfortunately it reinforces the false belief that a lot of people have that both parties are exactly the same, that corruption is everywhere. We should be apathetic about our politics because it's all so corrupt and there's nothing we can do about it, right? This kind of shit promotes voter apathy. It promotes distrust against Democrats. Much of that distrust is warranted. We need a clean house. We need a clean house. We can't get to a point where we have comprehensive campaign finance reform, where we can't have dark money doing shit like this until we have people in office who are willing to vote to stop it. And if we keep re-electing people who take millions of dollars from APAC, from big crypto, from other, corporate and foreign interest, if we continue to elect people who are like, there's nothing wrong with me padding out my portfolio with a bunch of individual stocks. Oh yeah, maybe that's going to influence on how I choose to pass laws and policies that regulate those businesses, because I have a vested interest now in getting a good return. I need to have big fat dividends for myself every quarter. Maybe that's shaping the laws that I pass a little bit, but I'm not ethically compromised. Who the fuck wants to vote for that? Why would that prompt anybody to want to vote for the Democrats? We need to clean house. We need an anti-corruption party. We need anti-corruption candidates. If we are going to create a government that will implement the necessary reforms that are desperately needed for us to reinstitute democracy.
Is it purity politics to disclose if you're being sponsored, if you're being paid to promote a policy, a position, a candidate? I don't think that that's purity politics. If you make sponsored content promoting a product or a service, by law, you must disclose it. As I said in my original video, I have zero problem with influencers being paid to promote politicians, to promote policies, as long as they simply disclose it. Multiple of my mutuals, including one who was mentioned in that article, have been very transparent about the fact that they have been sponsored by folks to promote specific policies, progressive policies. I have zero problem with that. Those folks aren't journalists, they're influencers. They don't lose any integrity in my eyes. In fact, they gain it when they say, hey, it's my job to promote my values, the causes that I care about, and I partner with organizations who help me do that better. I'm fine with being sponsored by organizations whose values align with mine. I don't think that that's a problem at all. And I've been thinking about this, right? So a number of people in my comments were like, I'm going to immediately cancel all those creators. I don't think that that's what you should be doing based on one story. The fact that I had a bunch of people in the comments of my YouTube videos that were about other subjects before I talked about the Wired article yesterday, being like, Angela, I hope you're not on the list. Please don't be on the list of influencers who takes money. That prompted me to make a video immediately because people were based off of that one piece saying, I don't want to have to cancel you. And I'm like, okay, y'all, one, is this cancel worthy? But two, is it a nothing burger? No. I think a lot of very pro-democratic, the same kind of people who screamed at me when I was mad anytime I get mad at the DNC, were like, this is a big nothing burger. This is purity politics. The fact that so many people are jumping to one extreme or the other, we should cancel all of these influencers, or this is absolutely no big deal. This is nothing. We shouldn't concern ourselves with this conversation at all. Right? My original point was nothing wrong with having a sponsor for your content. Nothing wrong with being paid to promote a product or an idea. It's just not something I personally want to do. And I would never, ever take money to be told to be quiet and not talk about certain issues. And I would never take money if an organization said you cannot disclose. That would violate my personal ethics. But after thinking about this quite a bit, I really think that the confusion, I really think that the I don't want to say drama, but the conflict here arises from the fact that influencers blur the line between journalism, activism, and promotion, right? So there isn't the same code of ethics that there are for journalists, but there are people on that list. And again, the list was they were in the chat. We don't know whether they took money or not. But there are people on that list that are viewed as journalists that kind of promote themselves as journalists, right? And Rev Pop Pop has talked about this in the past. Some people here consider themselves political artists. Some people consider themselves activists. Some people who are social media creators, who are influencers, function as basically lobbyists. That's all fine. There's just not transparency as to who is what. And so if you're watching somebody because you think that they are a journalist reporting the facts, and then you find out that they were paid by an organization to promote a specific position, then they lose credibility. There is a perception of a lack of integrity. It erodes trust between them and their audience. It erodes their ability to communicate the ideals and policies that they are being paid to promote in the first place, that they say they care about in the first place. That's not purity politics. I understand there's going to be people on the left, and I can think of one particular influencer who's just, I'm sure giddy over this article, right? The same one who said that the Democrats approached them in the last election to sponsor content. It was never the Democratic Party. It wasn't the Democrats that are doing that. And I said back then, so what? So what if nonprofits are like, hey, we're really all about creating policy around affordable housing. Could we partner with you to talk that up? And to maybe talk up legislators who are also interested in pushing our affordable housing policies. Nothing is wrong with that. That's not the Democratic Party paying somebody. Just disclose it. And again, I think it is this blurred line where if you're a journalist, you should not be taking money to promote certain ideas, but any of us who are making sponsored content should just fucking disclose it, or we lose integrity. You lose the trust of your audience. And I got a bunch of people in my comments who were like, oh, well, the Republicans have done this for a long time. Yeah, no shit. That doesn't make it okay. And this person and a number of other people were like, oh, well, Democrats need to play dirty. Yeah, obviously, I have been yelling at them to play dirty, to be fighters since November. To me, playing dirty to save democracy does not mean take $8,000 a month to promote an idea or a policy and then not disclose it. That's weird. That's not my concept of playing dirty. What Gavin Newsom is doing is my concept of playing dirty. Right, I talked about that in a video the other day. That's uncivil obedience, malicious compliance. The reason so many people are apathetic about the Democratic Party and Democratic candidates is because they see both sides as corrupt. They know they know Republicans are taking money from all kinds of sketchy sources. We know that MAGA influencers were taking money from Russia. We know that Republican influencers take gobs of money from all kinds of folks. We know that J.D. Vance was bought and paid for by Peter Thiel. We know all of that. We know that dark money drives our politics. That's why so many people are apathetic about our politics. And I completely agree with Ezra from Indivisible. If you want people to be excited to vote for candidates, if you want them to do something other than be like apathetic, like it doesn't matter how I vote because both parties are terribly corrupt and it's not my vote that counts, it's the money that is behind the scenes that's driving everything, so why should I care about voting? If you want them to vote for somebody, you're going to need an anti-corruption candidate. If Democrats are all about stopping the corruption in the Republican Party, which is obscene, the Trump regime is just grifting the shit out of the American people. It's all a giant, so many layers of grift. If you want to have a party that's like, we're going to stop all of the grifting, all of the corruption, all of the waste of your taxpayer money, if you're going to set yourself up as the anti-corruption party, then you need to have some semblance of integrity, some semblance of transparency. That's all I was saying in that video. You constantly tell us not to focus on the minutia and to look at the big picture. This is small stuff. There are much bigger issues with the party than some social media messaging backing. Thank you, KU Drew, for this comment. No, I completely agree with you that we do not need to be parsing down our partnerships to fight against fascism and only work with people who are exactly aligned with us on every political and social issue. That's what I mean about not focusing on the minutia. We need a big tent, right? That's why I'll talk up the bulwark, even though, they were like never Trumper Republicans, because they're willing to fight against fascism. I actually don't think it is smaller stuff to ask social media influencers to disclose when they are being paid, especially if there's somebody who's making political content, but even more if there's somebody who tries to frame themselves as an independent journalist. I don't frame myself as a journalist. I also wouldn't take money from an organization and not disclose it. Do I think that people who are like, we should cancel all of these influencers who are taking this money are being hyperbolic and ridiculous? Yes. Let's not throw those people out of the tent. This is why I think so much discourse on social media, like especially from the left, doesn't understand community at all. It's just about one-upmanship, and it's just about, I don't want to say cancel culture. When people say cancel culture isn't real, the left, we sure try and prove them wrong over and over. Right? People went to real extremes after reading that article. All I am saying is that you need to disclose if you are being paid to promote a product, a policy, an ideal, it's not that difficult. Just disclose. And if people weren't doing that, and they should have been, then we need to just encourage them to do so. I understand some big influencers on the left are going to play purity politics, are going to play cancel culture. I don't know, maybe they've already done this, but I've blocked them, so I wouldn't know. The question should be one about reconciliation. The question should be one about like, hey, what is it that we want to be going forward? How could it possibly harm us to have organizations, to have, I don't know if they're PACs or lobbying groups or nonprofits, a whole lot of different groups fund influencers, pay influencers to promote ideas, positions, policies. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a conversation about, hey, you know what? How should we be talking about this? How should we be disclosing this so that we maintain our trust with our audience and we maintain our integrity, and so that people like Taylor Lorenz are not writing hit pieces? I mean, you could argue about whether or not it was a hit piece. And I think we can fall into this fallacy here of being like, we shouldn't discuss this because there's bigger issues. I had people in my comments today who were like, while you all are talking about this, Donald Trump is spending $1 million a day with the National Guard in DC, wasting $1 million a day of our taxpayer money. While you're talking about this, ICE is still rounding up, immigrants in your neighborhood and stuffing them into concentration camps. Like, y'all, we can talk about multiple things at once. We are capable of talking about multiple things at once. But more than that, I do think it's important for us to not give fuel to the fire, or like the left third-party influencers or the Republicans who are anxious to start a fire under an already struggling Democratic Party. Should this be an all-consuming conversation that goes on for weeks and weeks? I hope not. I appreciate the folks who are on that list from that article who've already clarified and said, actually, this is what the situation was. I don't actually think it's ever bad to have an ongoing conversation about ethics, especially if you were trying to promote yourselves as the folks who are anti-corruption and you're trying to stop the corrupt fascists. Having ongoing conversations about ethics, about integrity, about backing, about finances, like that shouldn't be something that devolves into what actually is purity politics of like, we should cancel these people. This is the most egregious sin ever, right? The knee-jerk reaction, I think, is the wrong response. For me, in my initial video, I was very upset at the fact that I immediately had people in my comments, especially on my YouTube channel. I had made multiple other videos yesterday, and I had a lot of people in my comments who were like, have you read the Wired article? Please tell me that you're not on the list. I don't have access to Wired, but please tell me that you're not on the list or I'm going to have to stop watching you. And I was like, whoa. Like, I'm still mutuals with people who are named in that article. I still follow people who are named in that article. I'm not canceling those folks. I don't think that those folks should be chucked out of the community. I think that we should just have a conversation about what it looks like to have integrity and to build trust with your audience. To not erode that trust with a lack of transparency, right? Doing things behind closed doors and not disclosing to your audience. And maybe part of it too is that consumers of social media creators' content, the audience itself needs to adjust our expectations. Because I do find that, at least for me, people often put you on a pedestal. People often have very unrealistic expectations and don't understand that creators are like flawed human beings. They also maybe superimpose identities onto you that you do not actually hold. So maybe part of the issue here is that some creators are viewed as journalists by their audience, but they actually aren't journalists. People do that to me a lot. You're my one source of news. And I'm like, I'm not the news. Do not treat me as the news. I am not a journalist. So maybe that plays into it too. I think these are good conversations to have. I think these are worthy conversations to have. I don't actually think there are much bigger issues that we are obligatorily avoiding, neglecting, because we're talking about this small issue on the side. Do I think there will be creators who hate Democrats, who hate some of the creators mentioned in this article, who are going to use this to further their own agenda? Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I think that that is unfortunate. But at the same time, I don't think, like, be quiet, we shouldn't talk about this. Or I don't personally think this is an issue at all, so therefore it is not an issue, is a helpful way to frame what's going on. Because clearly we know that apathy when it comes to the Democratic Party, distrust when it comes to the Democratic Party is massive. Approval ratings are very low. So I do think this is connected to the greater issue of if you want people to trust the Democratic Party, if you want them to vote for candidates for that party as an anti-corruption party that will stop the corrupt fascists, you have to distinguish yourself. Discussions about finances, transparency, disclosure are really important. Everything is connected. While this may seem like a small issue, it ties into the much greater concern. Apathy and distrust in American electoral politics, how your average voter is very jaded, very apathetic, and doesn't feel that their vote matters, doesn't feel that their politician cares about them. They feel that their politician cares about dark money, cares about foreign and corporate influence over saving democracy, over the constituents. That is a huge, crucial, central issue in American politics right now. So to pretend that this doesn't tie in, I think, is doing us all a disservice. And I think if it can lead us to a greater conversation about Citizens United, about dark money in our politics, about what it means to have money tossed around, spread around to promote political positions, policies, candidates, and especially what it means for that money to be directed at the candidates themselves, right? Because I know my mutual Marie had said, well, this same organization that was working with these influencers also gave like $100,000 to Bernie Sanders. I haven't fact checked that yet. I just saw Marie's video on it this morning. Having a conversation about that, I think, is something that we should be doing. That's worthy. That's good. We should be sorting through and working through that. What's not helpful is going to be influencers on the left who have deep hatred of the Democratic Party and of a number of influencers on that list who are just going to be like, cancel these folks. Maybe this is my permaculture perspective, right? I'm always trying to frame it as the problem is the solution. This situation doesn't feel good. People feel disappointed in creators. Creators feel defensive. They feel that the situation was mischaracterized. It brings up ugly conversations about money, about ethics. So if we view it as the problem is the solution, what greater good can come out of this conversation? How can we use this issue to actually help us, to actually make progress, to actually move forward? I don't think that this has to be a toxic conversation. I don't think that this has to be drama. I think this can be a useful tool to talk about integrity, to talk about money in the Democratic Party, money in electoral politics in general, and also about ethics and transparency from influencers, and also about expectations and parasocial relationships between influencers and their audience. So I don't think that we have to view this as a distraction. I also don't think we have to view this as some like heinous debacle. How do we use it as the problem is the solution? As much as I want to have an ongoing conversation about integrity, ethics, disclosure, funding when it comes to influencers who are being paid to talk up either mainline Democratic or progressive policies and ideals, I'm actually really loath to continue to have that conversation today because I have a whole lot of other issues I want to talk about, and because I am getting a shit ton of waffles and pancakes comments, just the most bad faith interpretation of what I'm saying. I learned a long time ago when people start their sentence, so to be clear, so what you're saying is, so you're saying this, that like it's just going to be the most bad faith interpretation, or not even an interpretation, just a statement of something that I never said, an opinion that I do not have. I got the tweet ready to just like, because it is so common to get this kind of waffles and pancakes interpretation. Twitter, but also TikTok and Blue Sky, the only place where well-articulated sentences still get misinterpreted. You can say, I like pancakes, and somebody will say, so you hate waffles? No, bitch. That's a whole new sentence. What the fuck are you talking about? So when I get shit waffles and pancakes comments like this one, hang on, let me put up the whole thing. So to be clear, in your magical fairyland left wing, think tanks and political groups are supposed to counter the far-right media machine that owns nearly every media outlet and operates in capital B billions by not spending money on messaging. This is why we've lost. Son, I never said any such thing. So I will use this as my one example of waffles and pancakes discourse. There's a lot of these kind of comments. No sugar plum, that's not even remotely what I'm saying, and you know it. Wild how you took me saying, it's totally fine to take money to promote an idea. It's totally fine to be sponsored. Just disclose it. You spat back this bullshit. So what you're saying is, left can't spend any money. We can't do anything to counter the far right. How did you get that interpretation? You just wrote a little story in your head. You didn't listen to a goddamn thing I said. If you want to set yourself up as an anti-corruption party that is going to stop the corruption of the Republicans, that is going to get justice for the grifting that the Republican Party is doing now with billions of our taxpayer dollars, they are taking our money to inflict suffering, to literally kill people. If you want to be the party that says we're going to get accountability for that, we're going to get justice for what's happening now, if you're going to set yourself up as an anti-corruption party, then you better be ready to have a conversation about what ethics and integrity look like when you're spending money, so that you don't give any fuel to the folks on the left who fucking hate the Democrats. If you want to be the anti-corruption party, having conversations about money in a political ecosystem where dark money is currently running the show, foreign and corporate interest gets a stronger voice in our politics than the constituents. If you want to create an America of, by, and for the people, and not for billionaires, CEOs, corporations, foreign governments, you better fucking be willing to have a conversation about funding. I'm not saying that money doesn't play a part and wouldn't play a part going forward. I have made my position abundantly clear, and you saying, so to be clear in response, is not you clarifying shit. It's you twisting everything I said to try to superimpose a position on me that I have never had. Stop trying to stuff words into my mouth and listen to what I'm saying. It's really embarrassing when people engage in waffles and pancakes discourse. It's really, really embarrassing. And it actually doesn't help us muddle through issues like this. It's not good faith engagement. It actually doesn't help us work through this issue. That's all. I'm done engaging with people like this today. This entire issue is not a waste of time, but comments like this definitely are. The discussion of dark money, of funding, of disclosure, a worthy conversation, a good one to be having. It becomes a giant waste of time and a distraction when people pull this shit. There are too many other important things to discuss today. Perfectly willing, perfectly earnestly interested in having good faith conversations about funding from influencers, about disclosure. Not interested in any more of this nonsense. Okay, this is my last thought on the Wired article and influencers being paid by dark money, by PACs, by various organizations, for whatever reason. I completely agree that the article lacked transparency. When listing people who were in the chat, it was not clarified as to whether those people were actually being paid and as to whether those people were being paid to promote specific content. Again, I just want to clarify, I am mutuals with a number of people who were listed. I have not unfriended or blocked any of them. I still support their content. I just think we need to have more transparency, especially around people who are funding various influencers and what kind of bent that influencer has, what they promote themselves as. Let me give you an example. Elizabeth Booker Houston was named in that article. I have tremendous respect for her. We are mutuals. She's made it very clear from day one what kind of content she makes. I have always seen her as like a pro-democracy influencer. I have never once seen her as an independent journalist. And she's had a ton of transparency around who sponsors her, whose content she's promoting, what kind of policies, positions, candidates she is talking up and supporting. That is 100,000,000% fine. I think she's doing really good work. Am I going to agree with her on every single position? No, that's fine. I do not require somebody to hold every single position I do for us to be friends or for me to support their work. Do I think she's done anything sus? Absolutely not. I think the issue becomes when the waters get muddied as to whether somebody is a journalist and what their audience expects from them. And for me, it's so frustrating because we're going to see far left influencers who are just anxious to just take down the Democratic Party whenever anything they can use as bait to try and take down the Democratic Party, they're going to do it. And we see that from folks on the right as well. That is why transparency is so important. Someone in my comments said these creators weren't being paid to make content. They were just being paid. Y'all, if somebody is paying you and they have a political platform, they have policies that they are pushing, like nobody's just throwing money at influencers and saying, do whatever you want. We don't have an agenda. Just here, take money. It would be completely disingenuous to act like you are being paid in whatever capacity by an organization, whether it's to make specific content or not. You are being paid by an organization with a political agenda. To act like that does not shape or color your content at all is completely disingenuous. That's why we disclose. Heads up, guys. I'm sponsored by this organization. I've been hired by this organization. Does the other side do it? Abso-fucking-lutely. The right's being paid by Russia. They're being paid by tech bro billionaires. As I said in my other video, JD Vance is bought and paid for by Peter Thiel. Yeah, we have dark money all over our politics. That's why things suck. That's why the American people are not prioritized.
That's why an oligarchy has been able to ascend. That's why foreign interest from Bibi, from Putin, drives a lot of our politics. Do we need comprehensive campaign finance reform? Yes. Do we need Citizens United overturned? Yes. But also at the same time, if we are pushing for an anti-corruption agenda, if we are pushing for integrity in our politics and America that works for the people and not for corporations, it's not that fucking hard. Just disclose if you take money. Then people like Taylor are not going to make hit pieces about you. Then those like never Kamala, never Democrat creators who just vote for Jill or Claudia once every 4 years are not going to have ammunition. I do want to say again, I keep getting people in my comments, especially on YouTube, who are like, I immediately canceled my subscription. I'm blocking these creators. Don't do that. Let's not do cancel culture. These people are still making valuable pro-democratic content. Does it make it compromise when creators are taking money from organizations and not disclosing? Yes, and that undermines the good work that they are doing. Are there valid criticisms to be had? Are there questions people should be asking about money that is being paid to influencers who are influencing people? Yes, absolutely. I don't think that means that we should cancel anybody. I just think it means we should have a conversation. And I wanted to be very, very clear. I am not one of those people who will be taking money from these organizations and not disclosing it. In general, I'm probably not going to be taking money from any political organization. The same way that I don't do sponsorship from brands to sell their products or their courses or whatever. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that right now. I think it's an important ongoing conversation. The problem is I'm not sure that we can have that online without it deteriorating into something really unhealthy and really toxic very quickly. I already see a very strong binary coming out of this conversation. That's not good. It's not good. So I would love to continue to discuss this, but how do we do that in a healthy way that supports community, that is about reconciliation, that is about restitution, that helps further our shared democratic ideals, democratic with a small d. I'm not sure that especially TikTok is a place where that conversation can happen in a healthy and productive way. So I'm going to move on to other things for the rest of the day. Now I got to dip. There's an Indivisible meeting that started 5 minutes ago.